of the City of Valley Center for Budget Presentation Workshop will now come to order. Roll call.
Mayor Cicerillo.
Here.
Councilmember Stam.
Here.
Councilmember Evans.
Here.
Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Gregory.
Here.
Councilmember Kerstetter.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
Councilmember Colbert.
Here.
All righty. Item 3. Who's starting off?
Cool. All right. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Budget season. We've got our mission and our service description posted up there. It's what you've been accustomed to seeing in the past and stuff, but I won't waste time reading that for you, but it makes a nice cover page. I'm going to jump into our areas of responsibility. Basically, we're responsible for maintaining all of the parks and green spaces in the city. That equates to 7 park properties, about 51 acres, 4 public buildings, 19 facilities, equating to about 7 acres of property, a cemetery, 5 of the 15 acres of which is developed, we maintain, and 2 city fishing ponds and a swimming pool, partridge and a pear tree too. That is to give you kind of a snapshot of the specific things we do within our budget or within our department that we maintain. But just so you kind of have that at your fingertips if you ever want to look back. On the horizon, we've got some things we wanted to throw out there at you, and so a little bit of food for thought, and explain that we've got some things out there that we want you to be aware of. We regularly evaluate our processes and procedures to determine the most effective and efficient way to best deliver the best product possible. We are in the process of evaluating staffing levels and how it relates to our services that we currently provide. This specifically ties in with our discussion that we had at the last council meeting regarding the staffing for seasonals and the difficulty that that's created in finding seasonal staff and helping and looking at other alternative operations such as contracting out that we'll be talking about later tonight at the council meeting. And anyways, with regard to that, the mowing and landscape operation, it is kind of our area of focus. When we start looking down the road at the proposed 52-acre park over in the Iron Horse development that are affiliated with that in the TIF district, that is something that we're considering. I mean, we need you guys to be aware of this information because as we kind of go through these next few slides here, we want to kind of paint the picture of the staffing deficit that it could create when we add these acres and stuff. So this slide here is all of our mowed properties by warm and cool season acreages. The green is the cool season acreages that we mow, and the red is the warm season acreages that we also mow. Just to kind of give you some perspective on what we do. McLaughlin obviously is the largest property that we have out there, followed by Lions Park and the community center area. So. You have to click again. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this paints the picture of the park, the new proposed park, the 52-acre park on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, you see that that area right there represents the areas, the mowed acreages that we currently maintain right now. We mow and maintain about 35 acres in this city stuff. So that's to kind of give you a perspective. That would be an equivalent area equivalent to the map right there. So quite an increase in property, if you will. Obviously, not all that's mowing area, so we have taken that into consideration. When you look at that, and when we're talking about adding staff, we have made some calculations, some estimates based on that information. We know some of it may be hardscape, so we're not calculating for the full 52 acres to be mowed, but yet maintained. And we don't know what that's all going to shake out like at this point, but we're trying to make some general assumptions to just kind of paint that picture for you so you kind of have an idea moving forward into the future. Our department currently runs on 5 full-time employees, including myself in that mix. We use 3.5 full-time equivalents, which is what the top portion there is to represent, and they mow on an average weekly basis 23.5 acres. That's our warm season, cool season, averaged out over the course of the mowing season. If we're looking at that additional park acreage, we're looking at almost needing 6 full-time equivalent positions. And that doesn't necessarily mean adding 3 full-time people. It could, but it would have to we'd have to do something to offset that deficit in that regard. That means more seasonals or more contract mowing or something to offset that. So we would need an additional 3 full-time equivalent positions to make up that deficit to maintain that property. Just making some general assumptions, not knowing how the park is going to completely develop out at this point and what that's going to look like. We just kind of wanted to paint that picture for you guys tonight with regard to that. Are there any questions about that? I know I covered that really quick and there's a lot of information there, but we just wanted to kind of paint that picture that down the road, we may be looking at we're going to be looking at a lot of different options. We're going to look at, staffing specifically as one of those primary needs as we move forward and add that park into our park systems.
Councilmember Anderson has a question.
What, do you know a figure, or does anyone, maybe Barry, know what an FTE, what a full-time employee costs? Know what we're looking at cost to add?
45. Yeah, you might best.
Based on our average salary wage for that type of position, it'd probably be anywhere up to 40,000 salary plus benefits.
Okay.
Overall.
You good?
Yep.
Councilmember
Sorry.
Kerstetter has one as well.
Yes.
So are you proposing we start putting that into the budget 2022 or just start thinking about it for
I
2023?
think at this point, it's really food for
Okay.
thought.
Okay.
Again, that's why I painted it as
No,
on the
no,
horizon.
That's why I'm asking the question. That way I can
You bet.
think about it next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
It's just something we wanted to make sure you guys.
No,
were
and
aware of.
I'm glad you're forward thinking also.
Okay, switching gears here a little bit, we'll jump into the budget requests. Our focus is on quality of place as usual and city services and infrastructure. Our first request is for public safety building roof. Roof is approximately 21 years old at the public safety building. We've had countless leaks up there. We've patched, we've had contractors out and patched over the years. It's it's the old modified bitumen roof structure, a very good roof in its day. Not a lot of people do them anymore. A lot of them are being switched over to like a TPO roof, if that means anything to any of y'all, but it's basically, it's more of an antiquated process and stuff. It's laid down with tar and big rolled roofing pieces. And we recently had our insurance adjuster out to look at some other buildings. They did replace a roof over at was it Headworks building? It was? Yeah. And they used the process that we're recommending here for replacement on that roof. And that's an elastomeric, it's a fluid applied elastomeric roof process. And basically it's like a sheet of rubber plastic looking stuff that gets sprayed over the top of your existing roof. That's one advantage to this process, is that it can be applied over the existing substrate. Again, in talking with our insurance adjuster, he recommended this. I said, if this was your roof, I mean, you have no dog in the fight. I said, if this is your roof, what would you replace this with? Having looked at roofs for as many years as he has and stuff. And he's looked at this roof on multiple occasions, actually. And he says, this is what I would go with. We had already received bids just to get in the ballpark and kind of know what we were looking at last year. And, knowing that this was probably something that we were going to have to do, it kind of been put on the back burner for a bit, not knowing how the public safety building was going to shake out as far as if we were going to stay there, keep it, either way, we've got to do something to maintain that facility, because we have waterfalls at times in the fire bay, and we have indoor showers in some of the other rooms within the within the building stuff. Matt's experienced it in many of his different venues where he's officed. So anyways, what we're asking for here is a $45,000 project to be approved budget. And it does this particular, we would put this out for bid, obviously, but this particular outfit that gave us this quote, they said that this would carry a 10-year non-prorated leak-free warranty covering labor and materials, which is pretty outstanding that it carries both labor and materials and stuff. Usually a lot of them are just very minimal on the labor side, if they guarantee that at all. So I was pretty impressed with that. The next project that we're asking for is the replacement of 3 HVAC pieces of equipment. One of them is a 5-ton AC unit over at the Public Works building. It's been there. It's an old 2001 piece of equipment. It's been there for quite some time. The other two are both at the Public Safety building. The one unit is a split unit, so it's got a separate, be like in your house, it's got a separate furnace and air conditioner. And then the second piece is sits up on the roof. It's a package unit and stuff. Those are both 2005 vintage, I believe. Estimated cost for that request is $16,000. We also, just to kind of make you aware, this is not just stuff we're looking at trying to get done for any particular reason. We do have a replacement schedule that we do follow. We were trying to include that as a slide, but it was a huge spreadsheet, and it wouldn't really easily fit on a slide, let alone 2 or 3. So anyways, we do follow a replacement schedule for all of our HVAC equipment, and that would be the $16,000 for this request.
Councilmember Kerstetter has a question. I'm not sure.
On both of your estimates for the HVAC and the roof, are you accounting for any potential cost increases? Because I know a lot of industries are experiencing that right now. I don't know. I don't even know how much to even account for, but I'm making the assumption that this is based off of this year's bids.
Yeah.
So if next year we're up, then we just figure out a way to pay for it. Kind of
And
deal.
there-
Okay.
With the way the market is right now on all kinds of building materials,
Oh, no, I just replaced my AC in my house.
yeah,
I got a quotes from $7,000 to $14,000. I know, right?
yes.
And guess which one I chose? Somewhere in the middle.
The short answer is yes. Although these quotes for this information could come back way low. I
Right.
mean, we realize that there's definitely been some increases in the market as of late, and some big swings. So if we did see that, I'm sure we would bring that information back before you for approval, before we went ahead and did this and stuff. And we would, of course, going through our normal bidding processes. That's when you guys would see it. So.
All right, thanks.
The next item request is replacement of 2 60-inch Hustler mowers. This is the mowing equipment, part of the main mowing equipment that we normally use in our department. We run 2 60-inch Hustlers in conjunction with our Land Pride mower that pulls a 11-foot finish mower. And we usually try to keep these at least 7 years. We are at that replacement interval in our replacement schedule, and under state contract, I knew I was going to mess that up, state contract pricing, we got quotes for each of them for $11,000 a piece. So total request would be for around 22,000. So state contract pricing. And lastly, Brent's going to tag team this with me a little bit because this is a project we've been kind of conjunctively working on together. We are requesting your consideration on a city Christmas tree for the downtown area. Last year, we had the big city Christmas tree, and just to kind of put some things in perspective, we spent nearly $1,000 on that Christmas tree. It was like 950 when it was all said and done. And that just goes right into the, burn pile when we're done, or gets chipped up or whatever. So that's part of the reason we were bringing this before you. This particular one, which we'll show you a video of here in a minute to just kind of explain what it really can do. I will kind of talk about what we're asking you for here. And there's gobs of options under the sun. This one is $45,000. This particular one is, I was hoping for that, to see what reactions would be. But this one here is $45,000. They range all over the place. I reached out to 3 different vendors that deal in Christmas trees, and my mind was blown. They do all sorts. You can get your very basic trees that just light up. You can get stuff that lights up and flashes. You can get stuff that is LED, lights up and flashes, and then you step up into these RGB models, which means they've got red, blue, green in each lamp, and then they do all these fancy things, and you go up from there as far as the price tag goes. So basically anywhere from, you're probably looking at 15,000 all the way up to 6 figures. Quite honestly, things that you can control with your cell phone, change the colors, change the song, so on and so forth. So this one is a little bit more middle of the road, if you will, as far as technologically speaking and price tag wise. It would be more on the entry level side of things, because this one is for this size. This one plays 8 programmed songs of your choice, and then it also has its own pre-programmed light show built into it. So this is at that level of really cool wow that like your Botanicas are using. They probably get a little bit more advanced even and stuff than this, but we were trying to look for something that was quote unquote middle of the road without going too big, too small, too plain Jane, too off the charts expensive. That given, this is a lot of money. We realize that. So that's why Brent's here, and he's going to talk a little bit about that. But first, I'm going to let Barry load. That's only a minute.
While that's loading, I'll just kind of chit chat a little bit. So, this is one of those items that you kind of wait towards the end of the year and you're seeing where all the budget's coming in at. But the bottom one there, the fundraising, community donation, that's going to be a big component of this. I mean, we're not going to be asking the city to come up with the total allotment by any way, stretch, or means of the imagination. So we're going to be going to, PEC. And all of our amazing businesses that do business in Valley Center, and asking them for contributions. There's a lot of great communities that, buy a bulb for $75, and, a lot of unique different ways of fundraising for these types of attractions. As you've seen now on coming up on 2 strategic plans, the community is asking for it. They're asking for quality of life. They're asking for these types of little niches and enhancements in Valley Center. And so that's now gone through 2 different strategic plans to where the community is asking for these types of amenities. It's one of the reasons why the pool and the recreation center passed, overwhelmingly this time, is because the folks that are moving into our community are looking at things a little differently. Instead of throwing, $1,000, which we do split that, the last 2 years, we've split that with Main Street Valley Center. Still, of course, city tax dollars, because we do fund Main Street Valley Center. Why not look at something like this? Good job. And I mean, there are some really extravagant ones, and this isn't a guarantee. If it's in the budget, there's no guarantee of this, happening in 2022. It's something where, like I said before, we'll see where the budget's coming in at, and seeing what we can put together with Medicage, the community foundation, and trying to just plant the seed to hopefully something spectacular down the road. This is something that folks would be attracted to. We had great participation last year from our businesses in Valley Center when it comes to decorating their window displays. I saw a lot more vehicles in town this past Christmas season, just driving around looking at lights. Now, I know COVID, a lot of people had a lot of time and didn't really know what to do with themselves, so it was hard to find Christmas lights to put up. But this is something that will start separating us from the herd, so to speak, in the Wichita area, as we kind of start enhancing the downtown area and getting all those businesses on board with hometown Christmas and everything Main Street Valley Center is doing. So this is kind of one of those items that you kind of start planting the seed, and that starts with the mayor and council.
Councilmember Anderson has a question.
This is kind of a off-budget question, and more of a logistics question. What did you say the size of the natural tree we've been getting is compared to this?
The one we bought last year was about 18, 19 feet tall, and this one would be 26 with that star.
And so the question that came into my mind was, once we were done with that one, it went away. Where does this one go in the off season?
Well, a lot of them assemble and disassemble the same way. They are in panels and sections. They work off of the ones that I've seen. I haven't got the specifications necessarily for this one, but all the other ones that I've looked at, they do assemble on a kind of a ringed framework that pyramid up, and then you're literally hanging panels on them all the way around, and then each panel has a extension or a cord that comes off of it, and it plugs into like a center trunk line off of the supporting center pole or whatever, and they call it an umbilical cord. anyways, it breaks down and you can stack it on pallets essentially, and it would be stored probably in our old shop or upstairs at the current Public Works facility.
Did they have, in any of the specifications, did they have the amount of time that it took to assemble so we can, I mean, you're figuring in what we currently use manpower wise versus what if there's additional, if that's something we need to budget for, or
Don't recall
Okay.
if they gave an estimated time. I did watch a time lapse video of one. Well, I mean, that's been several months ago now.
Okay.
Of one that was done, but I can tell you that staff time to I mean, all the way from, I have to go get this one. Probably logged close to a week set up and take down with probably 4 staff members.
Councilmember Stam.
A couple years ago, we put limitations on people and their neon signs and stuff. Would this violate that ordinance that we created?
That's a great thing to look into when we're actually getting down and serious, making sure that we're not.
Brian's gonna.
Go ahead and
that's
measure.
the
You know,
nits.
it's,
Yes, the nits.
No, because it would be a commercially.
I was gonna say it's-
not adjacent to residential.
you'll be able to see it from your house though, Councilman Sam. So
There isn't residential.
that's the goal.
So is it gonna be on top of the grain elevator?
You know, you never know where we might place this thing either, so. But, you know, I think it's time, you know, to move on, of course, with time limitation, but, you know, this is something that, you know, plant the seed and we'll see, and that's why we put in the budget for this year to gauge input and just start the conversation.
Thank you. That's all I have unless there's any questions from.
Councilmember Kerstetter.
Christmas tree's an interesting idea. But back on the mowers,
Mhm.
if you get this RFP, which I wasn't here for that, I read the minutes. The RFP for the mowing, will you need those mowers that were in the,
We would still continue to mow quite a bit of we're still going to continue mowing a majority of our facilities and properties.
okay,
and stuff.
that's all I had.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
All right. Who's next? You didn't give me a list of who's going, so First of all, before you start, I want you to know that Chief said he's going to send at least 2 or 3 people because there's no way one could cover what he was going to do. Just so you knew, because I knew you were coming, but I thought I should let you know that's what he thinks.
Okay, well, I'll remember that. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. This is our Public Safety Department portion of the budget presentation. And with the police side, like I said, we currently have 17 full-time employees. That includes with the chief and public safety director, captain, 3 sergeants, a detective, canine officer, 2 school resource officers, 8 patrol officers, a records clerk, animal control and evidence custodian, and then a part-time records clerk and victim advocate. So we're pretty proud that we were able to have a #1 rating with the safest cities in Kansas. And that's something that, we feel real proud about and hoping to maintain that. And, some things that we have to do in order to maintain those things is obviously to maintain our full-time staffing and with our frequency of patrol and visibility, and then also doing our community policing projects and partnerships as well. So in order to maintain that, there's some different things that, we've identified as important in recruiting and retainment of quality police officers. And one, of course, is equipment. That includes everything from our patrol cars to the equipment that we carry on our belts and everything like that. So having to replace that as time needs and to update it. As far as training goes, also having quality training. The full-time officers have to maintain 40 hours of continuing education every fiscal year. That's from July 1st through June 30th. And sometimes that training costs money to do, and also to send officers to other parts of the state or even to other states in order to attend certain types of special training in order to keep them up to date on the latest trends and techniques that we can do our job to the best of our abilities. Another big one is the KPNF retirement system. And a lot of departments across the state and the region have the Kansas Police and Fire retirement system as opposed to having CAPERS as to what we currently have. And that's been a deterrent for some people from coming to work for Valley Center because they've already had many years in the KPNF system that pays better than CAPERS, gives a better rate of return in the end than CAPERS does. And when they see that we're on CAPERS, well, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to either look somewhere else or stay where we're at. So that's another big consideration that Mr. Smith has looked at. And, there's been some numbers crunched on that. And that may be a presentation at a different point in time, I think, that will give you some more information about that. Pay is another thing, keeping competitive with other agencies that are similar to our size. Like Park City utilized hiring bonuses There's been some other departments that have recently gotten some big increases in their starting wages. And so that's always been a revolving door, and a thing that we've had to play catch up on sometimes is it's moving all the time. That, you know, we might get an increase one year, then other agencies, they get an increase over us, and then we're playing catch up again. So it's always something that we're always having to keep on top of for our pay, and in order to be able to bring in quality officers to work for us and to hopefully retain them. I guess I'm going to go ahead and do the fire department side as well. And check my notes here. Are there any questions about the police side while I'm on that? Okay. Well, I'm also pinch hitting for the fire department. So we have, with Chief Newman being our public safety director, and we have a fire chief, captain, 3 lieutenants, which are paid on call, and then 2 full-time and 15 paid on call firefighters.
Hang on a second, Matt. Councilmember Colbert did have a question. I didn't see it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just curious, on your advocate position, it's part-time, correct?
Yes.
Is there any thought of doing that full-time? Because with the growth of your department, I think you're going to need it.
There's been discussion about that. And I think what I'll talk a little bit further about growth here in a minute and have some ideas there as well. So we'll kind of come back to that.
Okay.
So with the fire department, you know, responding to fire calls, medical calls within the city limits of Valley Center, and also assisting on county calls, having appropriate staffing levels for both the full-time and paid on call. And then equipment is another big consideration, maintaining current equipment, and also training. So as the city is, you know, expanding and looking to expand significantly here, probably the next 5 years, full-time staffing levels will need to be looked at, and to ensure that there's enough people to respond to those calls. And, you know, currently working with 2 full-time firemen working each shift. That's only a 12-hour shift from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then it's all on call after that overnight. So sometimes having to wait for additional personnel when you have a larger fire and needing, again, more people in order to respond with more trucks. Look at ways at bringing in more paid on call firefighters, because, you know, most of those, they've got full-time jobs elsewhere. And so they're responding from home, usually, you know, in the evening and overnight hours. And then higher numbers to ensure that we have enough people to assist on calls as needed. Maintaining proper staffing levels in the fire department is important of keeping the community safe. You know, some equipment that we've done here in the past with 2020, got the new self-contained breathing apparatuses to replace ones that had expired. Looking at ways of replacing the fire engine that was purchased in 1995. Like I said, that's the oldest engine in the fleet. And, you know, looking at getting an engine that is, you know, more modern design, has other safety features and things like that. And also, you know, as equipment gets older, it's tendency to have breakdowns, and parts can sometimes be an issue as well. And so keeping up to date equipment so we don't have those issues and have a truck that's just sitting, being broke down when we really need it. Training, focusing on quality training, both inside the department, outside. So, you know, the department does in-house training on a weekly basis. However, there are certain types of special training that they may have to travel for other parts of the state. And having the funds available to do that is always a big help. Also, the KPNF retirement system. Again, another recruitment and retention factor, even with the fire department, since that is a police and fire retirement system. And, you know, many of the departments around already have this type of retirement in place. And then also having pay and remaining competitive with other departments that are similar to our size. As a whole, with the public safety department, we're, again, continuing having to maintain equipment and looking at ways to improve that, replace it as it ages out. And one big consideration is our radios. The radios are having to have a major upgrade by the year 2025. And the radios that we currently use were predominantly purchased around 2007 and up to about 2010. We've had good luck with these radios. We've had very little issues with them. However, because of requirements by the FCC and also the radio systems in place that we use with Sedgwick County, there's just certain limitations that those radios have technology-wise. And so replacement of those radios is, before we know it, we're going to have a consideration for that. And we've gotten some numbers put together for those things. As far as with the police department, we would be looking around $125,000 to replace all of the police department radios. And for the fire department, almost $200,000. And like I say, we've gotten quotes today on those that are good till the end of August. And so those prices could be tendency to increase if we, have to buy later rather than sooner. So that is something that we're definitely need to address pretty quick so we can maintain good radio communications with within our department outside agencies. Records management system for both departments, that's going to be no longer supported. We are looking at joining the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office. They have put together a combination of a records management system that's also included with our computer-aided dispatch system. Sedgwick County has been looking to replace that system here for the last few years. And finally, they are in the process of building that system. I know we have some training later this month that's going to address the records management part of that. There could be, some cost down the road for that. Right now, it's not really going to cost us anything to join on with that, again, because it's incorporated with the computer-aided dispatch. The fire department's also going to have a system to replace their current firehouse system. That's a lot of their record keeping with their fire calls and manpower hours and equipment repairs and things like that and maintenance. So hopefully with the support of the Valley Center Public Safety Department, we'll continue to be both progressive and professional in the years to come. Now, as there was a question about, the part-time records clerk and advocate, maybe moving that to a full-time position. I know that has been discussed, with expansion of the city here within the next 5 years with increasing housing developments that are getting put in. That's going to be a consideration of increase in manpower for both the police and fire departments as we have more area to cover. So not only just the personnel, but their equipment. The police fleet may need to be increased too. And again, improvements with our fire fleet as well. So with the extra amount of reports and requests for records and things like that, that's where that other records clerk may have a need to become full-time. Because like I say, our current records clerk, she processes our traffic tickets. She processes record requests from attorneys for police reports and many other things, warrant entries for people that don't come to court and they get an arrest warrant. She has to process those. That's a pretty labor-intensive task. So as more work flows in and we have to funnel it to one person, that's just going to make her position that much more difficult, where we're going to have to look at getting more help for her in order to ease that workload, either from having maybe another day shift person or maybe even expanding that into someone that works later in the evening. A lot of larger departments have a records clerk working 24 hours a day. I know Derby does that. I believe Hayesville does. And, they're kind of our next bigger city counterparts that when they disbanded all their dispatchers like what we did, that all those became records clerks, and they got them working 24 hours a day because they're doing entries for wanted persons, missing persons, stolen articles, things like that. And because we use Derby as our backup when Phyllis is not working, that's who we use as Derby. So as a potential, as they get bigger in population, they get an increased workload as well. So I know that can be sometimes a hindrance when they got to help us after hours. And I know they'd probably appreciate us having more additional people to do that ourselves and using them. But have any questions about anything?
I've got a couple for you, Councilmember Kerstetter.
Yes, sir.
First, you did a good job.
Thank you.
Tell Chief Newman he owes you one.
Okay.
Second, wanted to point out something to the council. Can you go back one slide? If you can, I don't know. Okay, so your engine that we have up there, is that the same one that we have had in the CIP for about 10 years? All right, that, when I first started on council, it was like $625,000 to replace it. So
They
just
don't
some,
get cheaper as it goes.
I know, just some
Yeah.
perspective for us to think about.
And the other consideration with that too is the time frame it takes to get them.
Oh, I know, you probably order it now and you get it in 2 years or something like that, or?
I think it's usually been about a year.
A year.
I mean, by the time you spec it out and with what you want and, do the bid process, get somebody that's going to build it, and then it gets starting to get built. And for the time it rolls here and gets put into service, yeah, you're looking at probably at least a year.
Right, yeah. So, the other thing I had a thought about, which goes along with your presentation of forward thinking, because you guys are thinking about expanding we're growing, which is good. We're going to have more residential areas and potentially industrial and others retail, right? Public safety building, should we put that in the TIF area? Caddy corner?
Yeah, I was going to mention that next, as you mentioned that, yeah, our building is going to be another consideration.
Well, I mean,
We're-
just if you add staff, you don't have anywhere to put them right now, right? So I don't like the idea of spending money, but we need to think forward, right? So,
Yeah, and considering that our building, that was built in 1990, like Neil had mentioned with the roof situation, when that building was built, that was state of the art for a police department in its day.
Right.
And when you compare it to other departments that are, about the same size as we are, Park City, Bel Air, and Mays are probably the three best examples of that, of where they have all gotten newer buildings, and we haven't yet. We're still working with what we've had since 1990. So that's, again, with future growth and updates, and that's something we still got to keep in mind as our facilities we work out of. And so,
the TIF question was more of a taking out a section of that area and using it for the public safety. That's all I meant by that.
We'll be exploring all our options, moving forward in the future. Of course, a TIF area, you really want to have increased tax
No,
valuation,
I understand.
to help pay down that TIF. But no, we've had a lot of internal discussions, and moving forward, you'll see something on the horizon
Probably a 3 to 5 year plan.
as we start, navigating some of these other challenges.
I think that's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Councilmember Colbert had some, or one at least.
No, some is right. Actually, he's already talked about one of them. I was sitting here getting a feeling that you were talking about replacing the police headquarters and the fire department both into either separate buildings or bigger buildings. Is that correct?
there's been numerous ideas talked about with that. It's probably just going to come up to a matter of, design plans, locations, and, what's going to work to get the best out of the money as far as facilities. So, there's been talk with the fire department as the trucks get bigger, we sometimes just don't have the space to put them in there. And if you guys have, been to the public safety building where we've got the squad and the brush truck are backed into each other, and you've got about a 2-foot walkway to get in between them to get to the other side of the bay. So, space consideration is a big thing as the trucks seem to get larger as time goes on, and they have more functions for each truck. So yeah, that's another consideration is space for the fire guys as well with their equipment.
Okay, let me ask you another question then. Do you think the city of the Valley Center is in need of a substation for the fire department?
Like a second station?
Yes.
I'm not real sure about that at this point. I know, I think Derby is about the only other department that I can say, as far as size wise, because I think they're about 20,000 with Derby, and, we're a little under half of that. I don't know. That's a question for another day.
I don't
think,
mean to
and
put you on the
research. Yeah,
spot.
I
or anything.
understand. And I know there's been talk about that before because of, the number of trains we have through here a day and not being able to get to the other side of town for a fire call and having, something split up from one part of the city to the other. So we would, reduce that chance. But there's a lot of what ifs with that scenario, I think, yet.
Okay, and the other question I got, if I was looking on that, your one slide there, you said that Sedgwick County Records is going to take, and from the discussion I've heard from the guys at the commission meetings, when that, I can't remember his name, the captain of the fire department. Anyhow, was talking about joining records with some of the smaller communities. Would that be actually beneficial to us? Because if it's going to be under 911 operators, that's going to put an extra load on them.
Well, the records management part is a separate piece to the CAD system for 911. And what it's going to enable is that with all the departments being on a central records management system, we'll be able to see what, our clientele is doing as far as from one town to the other. And so we can be able to, somebody we run into and we can run their name through the database and we might be able to see what they've been doing in Park City, Bel Air, Derby, Hayesville, whatever it might be. And another thing with it is that we are able to, I guess, commingle a lot of the data between the CAD and the RMS. So we get a call, say of a theft report, and we can import that call data into our case that we do, our report, which will then be part of the records management portion. So it's alleviating a lot of duplication of work. It's kind of like drag and drop, if you will, of the information could come from your CAD to your report and then hence into the RMS. So it's going to simplify things. It's nothing necessarily that is personnel wise because it's all software based. It's a software and, Sedgwick County records people will have access to it. Our records people has access, and then 911 has their portion of it. So,
Which at the present time, most of them have that capability now, correct?
well, for 911, yes, the records management part, a lot of departments are using different things. And so we can't see what Park City's doing or Hayesville or Derby or things like that. So with this system, it's going to be more of a central repository for records and being able to see what those people are doing in other jurisdictions that we might be running into as far as, warrants or criminal activity, things like that. So that's been a big thing of what this central RMS is all about.
Well, then would the records and the computer systems and stuff like that, would that have to be updated? And that would it be for both departments?
Best I can tell, we will be just doing our normal upgrades with computer equipment, which, right now, every, 2-3 years, we're updating computers and trying to do that on kind of a staggered scale. So we're not, replacing everybody's at once. We're replacing X amount of computers a year and keeping it updated. And that's the thing with the current CAD system for 911 is that system is so old, it actually doesn't work very well with new computers. We've had that issue in the past where we've had to there's had to been certain things built into the new computers to make it think it's older than it really is. So the software will work. And so that's a big reason why they're finally getting that updated and replaced in the CAD system.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time and explaining that.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Davis has a question.
I just wanted to comment that on the substation that Councilman Colbert had brought up. I do live on the west side of town, and it is a big concern with the people on the west side of town
Mhm.
when the trains are blocking 2 and 3 intersections
Sure.
at one time. You know, yeah, it is brought up on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that's with the size of the trains being longer now, and theoretically one train could block the entire town. That's from 61st clear to almost 93rd. So when they're 16,000 feet in length, so.
Anybody else? Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Council, since we're running a little long on this, the decision's going to be made to adjourn this meeting and take a little bit of break before our regular council meeting, and then do a 6 p.m. Again, review on our next meeting. That'll pick up what we haven't done tonight. So in that case, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned until 7 o'clock for the regular council meeting.
I told you, Mr. Crack,